Hey, good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm on my way to work and just wanted to share some thoughts about knowledge. It's kind of a complex subject. Knowledge it's very interesting. We have this, I think, and I talked about it in a previous podcast. We graduate from high school or college, and we kind of put a period at the end of our education, right? But really, it's just the beginning. I mean, the real learning happens after graduation. And if you push yourself, you can learn a lot. I've just recently fallen in love again with reading. I've gone through phases in my life where I read a lot, and then I get burned out, and I don't, and I get in. And sometimes I've also noticed the whole analysis of paralysis kicking in, where I spend a lot of time reading and not enough time doing. But I love learning, I love discovering new things, and especially in the topic of self-development, goals, habits, systems, processes, and all those kinds of things. Knowledge, though, is gained from two sources, ultimately one source, and that is God. And if you don't believe in God, maybe substitute the word universe or whatever, the powers that be, inspiration. But a lot of us think that knowledge comes from another person. Well, that's true up to a point, because that person gained their knowledge from another person. They were taught. Every mentor who teaches gained their knowledge from somewhere. They were born just like everybody, completely ignorant, completely dependent, and unable to speak, unable to provide for themselves, unable to provide any ounce of independence. If a child is born and they don't have somebody caring for them, they're not going to last very long. So we're all born that way, and we all gain things through this life. Well, knowledge happens to be one of those. And if you go back far enough, ultimately the knowledge comes from an outside source, God. I believe in God, so that's what I would say. But if you don't, the universe or inspiration. But regardless, there's a lot of knowledge out there to be had, and a lot of things that are discovered. And when somebody gains knowledge, they can pass it along to someone else. We can teach each other. So we can gain knowledge from someone, or we can gain inspiration directly from God. Either way, we are dependent on others for our knowledge, except in rare exceptions where we discover something ourselves. And in that case, the knowledge was already there. All we did was discover it. We didn't create it. We didn't invent it. We didn't come up with it. We just discovered it. We uncovered it. That's research, clinical labs and medical tests and all these kinds of things. They're discovering new things every day. Well, the technology, the science, the materials that made that possible already existed. If you go back in time, hundreds of years, before technology, before most of the inventions that we live with today, even before cars, before any of the fancy things that we live with that are just common to us, so we don't even think twice about. If you go back in time, all of those things existed, just in a different type of material. And all humans did, all we have done, is combine materials and discover existing knowledge in such a way so as to reveal or bring that thing to life. So at some point we discovered steel, right? Well, steel was already there. We just discovered how to harness it and how to process it and how to form it into molds and then build buildings with it. So before there was such a thing as buildings, steel still existed in the world. It's just that nobody had figured out how to use it. So, as we're talking about knowledge, it's kind of a deep subject. Let me put it this way. I think this is kind of an interesting thought. This has to do with creativity. Everything that is in existence, let's say the chair that you're sitting on. If you're sitting on a chair, the chair that you're sitting on didn't exist at one point in the world's existence. It did not exist. Well, let me put it. It did exist. It just existed in a different form. So the chair that you're sitting on, before it was a chair, somebody had to come up with the idea. Somebody said, hey, wait a second, what if we stop sitting on tree stumps and rocks and we actually build something that's comfortable, put a cushion on it, we'll call it a chair. Some caveman, Arg, back in the day, said that. It was a good idea at the time. It was groundbreaking. Today, if you came out of the world and said, I invented a chair, this is a brand new technology that allows you to take a load off and sit down and you're comfortable, people would laugh at you because, well, it's been around so long, it's not new, it's not different. But at one point it was new, and at one point it was phenomenal, and it probably blew a lot of people's minds. Well, all that person did was combine existing elements. And that's all any inventor does, is combine existing elements. I've said this before as well. There is no such thing as a self-made anyone. Anyone that says I'm self-made millionaire, self-made this or that, you know, did they grow up isolated on a desert island without a mom or dad or teacher or coach or mentor or a friend who influenced them anyway? Did they never read a book before in their life? How did they get educated? How did they learn to speak English? How did they learn how to read? Somebody had to give them something in order for them to gain knowledge so that they could become who they were. And if anybody says I'm a self-made anything, they are simply not acknowledging the people who helped them get to where they are. Because every one of us is influenced by people in some way, shape, or form. Though we may not acknowledge it, that is up to us. Whether we recognize and are humble enough to thank the resources in our lives and God and our families and our mentors and our teachers and our coaches and our everybody who have influenced our lives, whether we do that or not is irrelevant, frankly, because either way, it still happened. The fact remains nobody is 100% independent of anybody else in this world, or you don't last more than about 2 or 3 days. So, inventing products and even knowledge is the same type of a thing. It's in existence. All an inventor does when he's inventing a chair is combine existing elements. He says, hey, look, that stump is kind of like a chair, and I like the fact that you can sit on it, and I like the fact that when you sit on it, it eases some of the tension in your back and makes you feel comfortable and helps you, endure boring meetings. So I'm going to invent a chair. So then he goes, and what does he do? Well, he takes wood, or he takes metal, or he takes wicker, or he forms plastic, or all of which are existing elements. He does not invent or create a brand new element out of nothing. He gets it from somewhere, right? So the car you're driving, you're going to say, okay, well, that was invented by somebody who made the car. Yes, but they got the steel from somewhere. They got the rubber on the tires from somewhere. They formed the pistons out of a certain type of material, and that material came from somewhere. And that somewhere, if you go back far enough, is, of course, the Earth. Mother Earth provides the source of all resources, all the raw materials for us to do everything. And all we do, a chemist, a scientist, a physiologist, anybody who creates, invents in the space of medicine or health-related field, all they're doing is combining elements in any field, really. But chemistry, I like to go back because that's kind of the molecular level. That's where the rubber hits the road on a lot of things. They're combining elements from the periodic chart of the elements in different ways, and they make new substances. Well, they didn't really make a new substance. All they did was formulate a new substance. They mixed existing materials together, and something new happened. So knowledge is the same way. When you get a thought, an idea, it's not your own thought or idea. It came from other sources. All you did was combine them together. And you might combine them in a new way that no one else seems to have done before. And you might, have a new idea based on existing elements combined in a fresh way. I invent products on the side, and this is all you do, is you take an element of one product, an element of another product, or you reform an existing material into a product. Like there's one product that I'm working on right now it's a certain type of handle. It's going to be made out of plastic. Well, I couldn't invent it if plastic didn't exist, right? I'd have to make it out of something else, steel or mud or whatever. And even then, I couldn't invent it if that material didn't exist. So we're all dependent on each other and Earth and God for creating things. And that's the foundation for knowledge. Knowledge comes from somewhere. Everything that you learned, you probably got from a book. You probably got from a mentor, a teacher, a friend, a cousin, a relative, an aunt, an uncle, a grandma. We're all influenced, and that's our knowledge base. That's where it comes from. And we become the same type of a thing for other people. So you have kids, they're gaining knowledge from you. Now, that's kind of a scary thought for some of us, but they are. And they're forming opinions, and they're forming habits, and they're forming thought patterns, and that knowledge becomes their reality. So they think in terms of that knowledge. So when something rings true to you, it's because it works with your values. It blends with your belief systems. And those belief systems came from somewhere. They weren't just out of nowhere. So as we go through life, think about that as you're gaining knowledge. You've got your inner self, everything from the inside of your skin, or from your skin inward. That's your inner world. And that's the most important stuff. That's your knowledge, that's your health, that's your relationships with your families, the intangibles. That's the stuff you can't take with you when you die. Then you've got everything else, the car you drive, the house, all the external stuff. That's your outer world. That stuff you cannot take with you no matter how much you amass. That stuff stays behind, and no one has ever been able to or is going to figure out a way to take it with them. Will not happen. You die, you leave it behind. So knowledge is that inner world substance. That's the stuff that matters, that you carry with you. So if you've graduated from school and you think, hey, I'm done, I want you to think again, because knowledge and learning should be a lifetime process for every single one of us. We have got to be hungry for knowledge, for more knowledge, better knowledge, more truth. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not true, that floats around, that gets people excited, and you find out it's not true. Be a seeker of knowledge, a seeker of truth, and make sure it's a lifetime pursuit. It's something you'll never get on top of. It's something you'll never arrive at and say, hey, there we go. Now I've got enough knowledge. That'll never happen. Be humble enough to always seek new knowledge. And I challenge you to seek knowledge in new areas. Pick up a science book, or pick up a book about math. Heaven forbid, right? Challenge yourself in other ways that you haven't before. Learn something new. Dive into history. Spend time reading books. Turn off the TV a little more. Turn off your social media feeds a little more. Or, social media feed could be a source of knowledge. Carefully choose the pages that you follow that show up in your social media feed. There's a lot of good things out there that you can follow and learn on your social media feed. But a lot of us just follow friends and funny memes and cat videos and things like that. So it doesn't produce, it doesn't help our inner world. It doesn't challenge us. It doesn't bring our minds along. And I think there's a tremendous intellect problem in America and throughout the world. People become intellectually lazy because everything just comes into us and we don't have to seek out knowledge. Used to be that you have to go to a library and check out books. In fact, before that, it used to be that if you could even read, you were among the extremely high privileged class of society. And if you had access to books, you were beyond, you were royalty, basically. Well, look at what's happened over the last hundreds of years. Books are everywhere. And we have endless, vast libraries of knowledge at our fingertips, literally. But yet, most of us are not taking advantage of it. Most of us spend our days doing a lot of things that don't matter. Spend our time doing things that are for, get a chuckle or entertainment purposes. And it's sad, because I think God put us here on earth with a mission to become our best selves, and we cannot do that if we aren't constantly learning and growing. The idea of progression isn't just temporary, it's permanent, it's eternal. And learning and growing and gaining new things, new insights into the life around us, and discovering what's already in existence, what God has put here on earth that already exists, uncovering that, putting things together in a new way so that something new happens. There's so much, I think, still waiting, so much knowledge still waiting to be discovered that's sitting around. But it ain't going to happen unless we go out and seek it. Be a seeker of knowledge. Make sure that that's one of your characteristics. Make it a goal. I mean, if you haven't written down your goals, and I mean, part of achieving your goal is learning and growing so that you can understand and you can think in a new way, because to achieve a new height or a new level, you have to think in a new kind of a way. So you have to expand your mind a little. Well, you're only going to do that by gaining knowledge of some sort. Maybe it's through a book, maybe it's through a podcast, maybe it's online, maybe it's with a mentor or a coach or something like that. But you have to expand your mind. And knowledge, understanding and learning and growing, that is what is going to expand your mind.